Welcome to a deep dive into the Vanguard class for Space Marine 2, centering on Operations Mode. This video will cover every facet of the class from weapons, perks, class abilities, tactics during gameplay, best practices, some pros and cons, and finishing up with an overall recommendation if you plan on making this your class for Operations Mode. First, I do want to say I have about 400 hours in this game. I've beaten all levels on Lethal with about every class. I've gotten every single weapon to Relic level, and I've exclusively played Pugs in Operations Mode since launch. After reading and listening to several overviews, how-tos, and guides, I felt that nobody had really covered each class in depth, or at least to the point an average viewer could either learn from or make a decision on which class to burn their precious time on and be happy with their choice. Speaking of burning time, let's get it started. Overall, this is a very mobile, very versatile killer. Your survivability is beyond any other class, and your role in the field is very dynamic. You carry some good weapons that can either reach out at long range with the Oculus bolt carbine or cause massive, devastating damage at close range with the Melta rifle. Your melee ability is further bolstered by having the grapnel launcher, giving you the option of closing distance to the enemy or using it for tactical retreat. This class is actually good at everything and has specific class perks that make you damn near immortal, even though you only have 2 armor slots. If you are just getting started in this game and you need a class to push to max level, get your secondaries maxed out, and get a good feel for lethal mode, this is probably the best class to start with. There have been a few times where I felt like this class is basically cheating. Once you get to 25, Ruthless mode is an absolute joke, and you no longer need medkits. If there was one thing you provide for your team at that point, it's that you are the one person in the 3-man team who won't need to pick up medkits to heal. I've had many operations come to the point where I was the only one left alive, fighting off large groups, only to resurrect the 2 other guys while I had full health and full armor. This class may not be the hardest hitting damage dealer, but its survivability is second to none. First part of staying alive for this class is how you engage with the enemy. Your weapon choices for this class provide you with a few tactical options. For your primary, you can choose between the Oculus bolt carbine, the Instigator bolt carbine, and the Melta rifle. All 3 have their purposes, and all 3 are viable choices, depending on how you want to play. We'll start with the Oculus bolt carbine. At first, I hated this thing. It didn't hit very hard, the fire rate is not very fast to compensate for its damage level. Its reload takes a while, and the amount of ammo you start with the first time you use it is not even close to enough. The dynamic changes when you zoom in. The weapon's accuracy and recoil mitigation seems to stay very level when you are zoomed in on target, giving you the opportunity to aim for the head. When you level this up to Relic level, it becomes very viable. Still takes a fair amount of ammo to down Majoris enemies, but you can mow down the minor enemies easily. Once upgraded, you can carry a drastic amount of ammo. I rarely run low on ammo with this weapon. As far as perks go, let's go through them all one at a time here. Alright, so first off, I want to say that I went with the version that had a little bit more accuracy for the Oculus rifle here. I didn't feel that the other ones, even though they provide more ammo or one that provides just one more damage, I didn't think that those were viable after getting the perks that I'll show you here. So that is the one that I went with. Just a little bit more accuracy. 3 more accuracy to be exact. So here we go through the perk tree. Very first one, Perpetual Precision. That's a max spread decrease by 10%. When you're in your standard mode, when you first open this weapon, yeah, that's probably a good one to get. Especially in contrast to Great Might, damage increases by 10% against Terminus level enemies. Why? At the frequency at which you're seeing Terminus level enemies, really 10% is going to make the difference? I didn't think so. Pushing into Mastercrafted, first one, Elusive Precision. After a perfectly timed dodge, maximum spread decreases by 25% for 5 seconds. Yeah, that's fairly decent. A max spread decrease of 25% is good, but it's only for 5 seconds. Basically, what this is getting you is the moment you've dodged out of an attack, you turn and light up the enemy, and it's going to be very, very accurate. Although I will tell you, if you're dodging, they're right in front of you. Why the fuck do you need a decrease in your maximum spread? So increase to your accuracy. Didn't seem very logical, but okay. Retaliation. After a perfectly timed dodge, deal 25% more damage for 5 seconds. I will likely be picking this one instead. This one is a lot more viable. If you're dodging and then you turn and you're shooting someone, they're right in front of you. It's probably better to have better damage than accuracy. So I might actually be rebuilding my tree here shortly. Next one in Mastercrafted. Reload all weapons 10% faster. That's all weapons, if you can read. That means that all your weapons are 10% faster, including this one. Always a good one, since this reload sucks. So, next one. Perpetual penetration. Yeah, this one's kind of a must. Especially since the piercing. So that's what this is when you see this. There it is, power to pierce consecutive targets with one shot. So each shot, that's how much it's going through. That's a 1. So I actually think that ends up being 0 penetration from shot to shot. So having this other one, 1 additional target, so basically it turns that to a 2. Yeah, especially when you're firing into crowds, it's a lot better, especially when you're trying to take down groups of small guys. So I like that one a lot. Now, pushing into Artificer. Finisher reload. After a finisher, the equipped weapon instantly reloads. I can definitely see the benefit to that, since, like I just said, the reload is kind of crappy on this one. So I can definitely see the viability in this. Next one, reloading immunity. While reloading, you do not lose control from heavy hits. I can definitely see the benefit of that. Not really an important one to me, so I might skip that one when I rebuild this tree. Moving into a very important one to me, extended magazine by 15%. That one's always viable, having more ammo, not even just overall, but in the magazine that you have. That one seemed fairly critical. I think that pushes me to 34. Well, total, I know that I have 34 rounds per mag right now that I'm running. That one's pretty good. Above that, fast regeneration. This is another one of those, killing an enemy restores armor by 0.5 seconds. It's only one enemy, and it's any kind of enemy, so I can kind of see that. It doesn't say... Actually, I'm reevaluating this one. It doesn't say that there's a timer on that, so if I kill consecutive, minor, Minoris level enemies, you slaughter 10 of them. I think it'd be 5 seconds. I think I will be rebuilding it to that one. I did not notice that a lot of these... Oh, is there another one? There's another one in here that's like, oh, no, that one has no counter on it either. So consecutive enemies being killed could really rack up your regeneration. I will definitely be rebuilding this. Okay, let's get through this and then I'll do that. Hone precision. Equipped weapons maximum spread decreases by 25% while firing without aiming. So I don't really fire without aiming with this thing, unless it's right in front of me, and just like I said before with one of these other ones, who gives a shit? If the guy's right in front of you, you don't need to be aiming at an insane precise level. At 25%, who cares? Why? So that's kind of pointless. If you're firing at range where you need 25% more accuracy, zoom in. Stop hip firing at that range. Come on. So this one seemed kind of dumb. So I'll go down here. Damage increased by 10%. Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely get that. Magazine restoration. This one's a pretty good one. This was one of the ones I was aiming for initially. When your health drops below 30%, your ammo reserve is restored by a full magazine. Cannot exceed max ammo, and cooldown is 30 seconds. The cooldown's actually not bad, considering some of these other ones like this is like 120, so 30 is pretty good. Magazine restoration. When your health drops below 30, please realize that this class, once you've got it maxed out and you have perks that will benefit your health, you might drop below 30 and go above 30 and drop below 30 and go above 30 pretty consistently. You keep doing this and you keep proccing this perk on this weapon, yeah, you're going to start just racking up more ammo for this weapon just by fighting. I actually, having played this a lot now, yeah, I can definitely see the viability of this perk. It's a pretty good one. Okay, rapid health. When your health is below 30%, killing 10 enemies in rapid succession restores health by 5%, cooldown 30 seconds. This is not enough for too much work, in my opinion. So first you have to be below 30%, you have to kill 10 enemies in rapid succession, whatever the metric is for that, and it only restores 5%. I don't care. I'm spending my mastery points elsewhere. On to fast regeneration. Killing an enemy restores armor 0.5 seconds earlier. Again, there's no timer and there's no non-consecutive blocker inside the metric for this. So I could actually see this one being pretty good. If I got this one and this one, that is what I'm going to do. Missed that one, I'd be pissed. I'll figure it out. Of course, big one here, increased capacity. Maximum ammo reserve for this weapon is increased by 20%. You can't not get that. So, please aim for that one. Chaos Eliminator adds 10% to damage to chaos enemies for this weapon. Actually, it doesn't specifically say for this weapon. That actually could be overall damage against chaos enemies increases by 10%, so that's whatever you're using. I'll have to check that out. Same kind of thing up here for the Tyrannid Eliminator. It's just 10% increase against, or 10% of damage increase on Tyranids specifically. So if you want one of these, that's totally up to you. This is, again, one that I don't know. It's not enough for just Terminus. Damage increases by 10% against Terminus level enemies. If this was 20, I would think it would be viable, or more, of course. But just 10% doesn't seem like it's worth spending any points on that. And this last one up here. Perpetual Precision. Max spread decreased by 10%. Yet again, not worth the mastery point. Better spent it somewhere else. I already am using the version that has better accuracy. I'm not spending a point on this. Now that I've gone through all this, I actually do want to, as I want to do in each one of these that I do, completely reset my perks. I don't want that one at all. Now, the ones that I was seeing, so like, let's do this again. Yeah. Okay, so if I, as an example, do that, because I'm aiming for all of these, I don't care about that health. So, I do want that, though. Alright. I need these. This is your ammo and damage. And of course, this is important as well as this. Now, is my penetrating the targets more important than an additional reload of armor? Now, basically, I am missing out on the additional penetrating target. I will just shoot more. That's what having a lot of ammo for this class is all about. So I probably will like that. I'm going to have to give this a run right after I make this video. Missing that's not a big deal. Like I said, I tactically reload. I'm not going to reload in the face of getting hit. I'll roll, put an object between myself and my pursuers, and reload when it's tactically necessary instead of being a dumbass and reloading outside of cover in front of everyone like an idiot. So, I kind of wish I could get... I actually think this is a pretty fair build. This one I really wish I could get. Oof, man. That's the only one I really wish I could get out of this whole group that I'm not getting right now. Oof, man. And it's overall damage. You deal 25% more damage for 5 seconds. The next few hits, after you dodge something, you're kicking ass. That's pretty good. But maybe I won't have to really worry about it if I'm rebuilding my armor by a full second per killed enemy. I got to give that a shot. So overall, again, I like this build as I'm kind of reading through all of these again. And again, I urge you to, the base level accuracy on this is shockingly shitty in comparison to even what it's saying up here. This is, with spread and recoil, by the way, that's both things being calculated here. So your vertical climb as well as just the overall accuracy of the weapon. As you can see, this is your base level assault rifle for this class. Good amount of ammo, mid-level accuracy and recoil. Really the only advantage with it is that you can zoom in a lot. Leveling it up is not fun. Be warned that you may want to just run difficulty levels equal to its weapon level. Don't try to push to Ruthless until you have all the Artificer level perks unlocked. It will be a little frustrating. Not that it isn't impossible, it just makes this weapon feel super weak.
Use the codes to prime the bomb and finish its deployment into the critical medium well. Cautiously, if you know what is good for you.
Second, let's go over the Instigator bolt carbine. I like this one a lot, even though the 3-round burst is a little goofy. The reason 3-round burst was even designed for real firearms was to force soldiers to conserve ammunition. It makes you reevaluate your target, adjust recoil, and pull the trigger again with a little bit more clarity instead of going full cyclic and spraying bullets everywhere while you try to adjust mid-spray. This weapon hits harder than the Oculus, is more accurate, and the burst of shots is faster than the Oculus fires. It holds less ammo, but due to the 3-round burst, it actually feels like you have more most of the time. This weapon excels at taking out Majoris enemies, Tyranid or Chaos, since it can scope in like the Oculus. This makes it easy to get those headshots in critical engagements. This rifle felt a little middle of the road, more than the Oculus, as the reload is not as bad, and the damage and accuracy are just a little bit better. As far as the perks, we'll go over each one here. Alright, for the Instigator bolt carbine, I went with the version that has the most ammo. This thing's already accurate enough, you don't need anything that's going to increase the accuracy overall for this. But for the perk tree, the first one, Headhunter. Headshots deal 10% more damage. Absolutely can see the viability in this, especially early on. This is an easy weapon to hit headshots with, so I can definitely see that as being a plus. The one that I felt was a lot more important, of course, was especially in the very first perk that you get, Extended Magazine. Magazine size increased by 15% of the maximum. Yeah, to start with that is pretty intense. I can't see choosing 10% headshot damage over just having more bullets, period. So that's why I went with that. Next, into Mastercrafted, Reloaded Restoration. After reloading, your ammo reserve is restored by 50% of the number of enemies hit. Cannot exceed max ammo capacity. Obviously, I felt like that as a kind of a trick perk here. There's no cap, except for, obviously, can't exceed your maximum ammo, but there's no time cap on that, and you can kind of fudge it. So after reloading, your ammo reserve is restored by 50% of the number of enemies hit just prior to that reload. I feel like they should have maybe explained that a little bit more. If you hit, say, by the way, that's enemies hit, not enemies killed. You spray into a crowd and hit 10, then that's 5. So your ammo reserve is another 5 bullets got added. So again, I think this one's really good as far as just your every time you are reloading, you're getting ammo back. So you're constantly getting free bullets as long as you're hitting multiple targets. Think of that every time you're spraying into groups of the Minoris, the minor guys. I think that's really good. Just spray into a bunch of them before you reload. Try to get a bunch of them out, and that'll help a lot. Next one, Efficient Hunter. After reloading while having low ammo, headshots deal 35% more damage for 5 seconds. So it's only 5 seconds, and it's while having low ammo in the magazine. I can see this one being a good one, especially if this was the first one that you got. These two together actually seem like they're pretty good. It just wasn't what I was going for, especially since contrasting 2 major ammo boosts. I feel like this already does great damage and is very accurate, so the thing I just needed was more bullets. So that's why I went with Reloaded Restoration versus Efficient Hunter. Next one, Fast Reload. Reload all weapons 10% faster. That's all weapons, not just this weapon. I can definitely see going with this one. Again, this one I actually really like the tree overall, as I'll get to here. That you could go with pretty much anything. You can't really go wrong with the stuff in this for this weapon. I like this weapon a lot. I've had a lot of fun with this rifle. It's been great. The next one down, Adamantite Grip. Recoil is reduced by 25%. That is the reason I went with this rifle as well. That almost eliminates everything. The accuracy is already fairly high, even at an early level. It's already at a 6. So reducing recoil overall by 25%, that seemed incredible. So especially at Mastercrafted, that seemed really good. So next one, pushing into Artificer. Honed Precision. Equipped weapons maximum spread decreases by 25% when firing without aiming. Again, they did this on the Oculus as well. Maximum spread decreases by 25% when you're firing without aiming. So when you're hip firing, you have a lot better accuracy. If I'm hip firing, I don't need the additional accuracy. The guy's right in front of me. I'm hitting him. It doesn't matter. So this is another one of those ones where even though I have this perk, I'm kind of like, why? It's just a stepping stone to get to the next one. The one above it. Finisher Reload. After a finisher, the equipped weapon instantly reloads. The reload for this is not too bad for what it is. Again, just think about where and when you're choosing to reload, and you're fine. So again, not really an important one to me. Now, everything in this cluster seemed to actually be pretty good, including the one I didn't get. First, Headhunter. Headshots deal 10% more damage. It's a replication of the very first one. Fast Regeneration. Killing an enemy restores armor 0.5 seconds earlier. That's very similar to the one I just chose on the Oculus, so I I don't know. I'll have to reevaluate this. I might actually end up getting the other one just to see if I can boost my armor a little bit more. Then we got Great Might. Damage increased 10% against Terminus level enemies. Seems fairly pointless to me. 10% against enemies you rarely see is increased capacity. Obviously a huge one. Max ammo reserve of this weapon increases by 20%. That seemed like a no-brainer. You don't have a lot of ammo for this weapon. I really centered on ammo, especially when you first start using this weapon. You don't have a lot of ammo in comparison to how much you're using it. So anything you can get, any perks or anything you can get to have more ammo is a major plus in using this weapon. Cleaving Fire. Shots will penetrate enemy block stances, dealing 25% of the usual damage. Considering that a lot of the Tyrannid Majoris enemies tend to, hold their swords up and cross and then just charge at you, being able to down them really easily with this was really nice. It happens enough where I felt like this was a beneficial one. And again, this is the fast regeneration. Killing an enemy restores 0.5 seconds earlier for armor. Yeah, I could see getting both of these. Anyway, moving on to Relic. And again, I kind of feel bad because I really spent a lot in here, and I have none of them in the Relic level here. Rapid Health. When your health is below 30%, killing 10 enemies in rapid succession restores health by 5%, cooldown 30 seconds. Again, as I said before, same exact perk exists on the Oculus, and it is too little for too much. First, your health has to be below 30%, and you have to kill 10 enemies in rapid succession for the smallest amount of health. It doesn't seem like a worthy payoff. Next, Rampage. After killing 10 enemies in rapid succession, you deal 25% more damage for 5 seconds. Cooldown 30 seconds. Again, it only lasts for 5 seconds, which will seem like a long time when you're using it. You deal 25% more damage. That's overall with any weapon, or melee or ranged. Yeah, I could see this. Again, it's an after killing 10 enemies in rapid succession. Doesn't seem to happen a lot. Not as much as people think. Especially with what rapid succession means overall. Maybe 10 of the minor ones, I could see it happening, yeah, but it takes 10. So anyway, Perpetual Penetration. Each shot penetrates one additional target. Yeah, I could definitely see the need for that one. I kind of wish I could get that. Definitely beneficial when you're shooting a lot of the minor ones. Reloading Immunity. While reloading, you do not lose control from heavy hits. Reload where it's safe, and this is inconsequential. Next, Adamantite Grip. Recoil is reduced by 25%. Good God, I wish I could get that. Oh, I already do. Yeah, I don't know why this is replicated in here, because this already has really good accuracy and recoil mitigation. In order to target this, you would have to put everything in here just to get it, and then you'd have, a reduction of 50% of your recoil. Not your spread, your recoil. I don't know why this is at the end. I don't know why this is here. They need to rework that. Not that it's not beneficial, but it's like overly beneficial in the wrong area. And also you have to regrettably miss a whole bunch of other good possibilities in order to get it. It doesn't seem viable. Last one, Fast Reload. Reload all weapons 10% faster. Yeah, sure. Definitely not worth spending all of your points just to get to, especially when it's right there. Now, if I had both of those, 20% faster, yeah. The reload's noticeable. It's there. So, 10% reload. Again, at the sacrifice of what? So, a lot of these don't have any viability. I really don't see it. I still feel that this build is pretty much the one I want. I could see doing this top tier here. It's almost everything up to Artificer is what you really want. The Relic perks are kind of shit. Anyway, that's all for the perks.
Last but certainly not least is the Melta rifle. This weapon is great for clearing hordes of minor threats or even groups of majors. It excels at close range, but can be modified to hit at medium range as well. It is best used after you grapnel launch up to a group and then just start blasting away at them before they have time to react or disperse. It doesn't have much in the magazine, and the reload takes a noticeable amount of time, but one mag dump from this weapon is usually enough to destroy groups of anything. Given the nature of this weapon, I find myself sticking to my secondary until the situation calls for it, and then I dump a mag or two to clear up those moments when the game tries to fuck you. If you play this long enough, you will see the game's AI spawning director radically fail and spawn in well over 100 idiots. The only time I survived those engagements was with this character rolling my ass off to get them to bunch up in a line behind me so I could burn down all these enemies with a Melta rifle. There is no surviving that with the Oculus or the Instigator. Anyway, let's cover these perks. For the Melta rifle, I went with the one with more range. When you're dealing with neurothropes or anything that's flying, honestly, even the new stupid enemy that flies around on the disc, yeah, that seemed like an important one to have, is just some range, because the base range is a 1. Even with more ammo, you're only getting 3 more shots, 9 more in reserve. I could see doing that if you really need it, but yeah, I think that this is going to be your best bet. There's other perks in the perk tree that help with ammo. 1 more firepower doesn't seem like it's going to really do enough. You're already hitting at 14. I think you're just going to need more range, so that's what I went with. Now, for the perk tree. First one. I mean, how can you not? Extended magazine. So there you go. In contrast to reload all weapons 10% faster. Yeah, it's a 10%, and this thing does have a hellish reload, but I personally just think it's best to just go with the more ammo. Pushing into Mastercrafted, Magazine Restoration. This is a familiar one. When your health drops below 30%, your ammo reserve is restored by a full magazine, cannot exceed maximum ammo capacity, cooldown 30 seconds. Please get this. It's going to happen, especially with this class, and you're going to rebuild that health anyway by killing majors that you're going to be able to kill now that you have this ammo. So, I think that this is a really important one. In contrast to Adamant Reload. When your health drops below 30%, the equipped weapon instantly reloads. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, if that's what you want. In contrast to these two up here, I think that's stupid, but, you know, the next one. Great Might. Damage increased 10% against Terminus. 10% of almost the top value of firepower. I think the only other thing would be the Multi-Melta at 15, or the Fusel laser rifle that I think is 15 or 16, depending on, you know, how you do it. Still, 10% of the most firepower that this character can put out against dangerous enemies, yeah, I could definitely see that being viable. When you're talking about this perk being used on simple pistols and small submachine guns and things like that, it seems stupid, but this is 10% of this up here, damage out per shot. So, I definitely like that. In contrast to the fast regeneration, killing an enemy restores armor 0.5 seconds earlier. I could see that, maybe if you're killing a lot of them, but instead, I pushed on through Artificer to get the damage increase by 10%. Obviously, that's a good one, even at this level. Again, that's 10% of your current firepower, which is extreme. Those types of perks are big when your power, your output is already pretty good. Next one, Fast Regeneration. Killing an enemy restores armor 0.5 seconds earlier. Again, if you were to get both of these in a row, that's a, you know, full second earlier that you're getting the armor. Not fantastic, but hey, it helps, especially if you're trying to make like an armor regeneration build. I get it. Next one, Extended Magazine. Magazine size increases by 15% of the maximum. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that it's a repeat of the one earlier, so now you're at 30%. Yeah, that's a good one. Fast reload all weapons 10% faster. I kind of like that the top has duplicates and the bottom has duplicates of each other. So if you were to get fast reload here, and yes, get adamant reload as well, I can see you reloading very fast, which is important with this beast. It takes a lot to reload, a lot of time. Next, First Shot. The first shot after a reload deals 10% more damage. That's fine. It's the first shot, and it's 10% of a lot of power. So that's pretty good. It's kind of mediocre for Artificer, but it's alright. Reloading immunity. While reloading, you do not lose control from heavy hits. That's fairly important for this weapon. It's not a throwaway one. I actually like that. Pushing into the final relic perks. Elusive Fire. After a perfectly timed dodge, fire rate increases by 25% for 5 seconds. That's pretty damn good, especially if you're being flooded with, yet again, one of those moments where you're being just overrun. Yeah, that's important, being able to get out as many shots as possible, get them off you. Oh yeah. And for 5 seconds, I think I can mag dump in 5 seconds, especially with that fire rate increase. Next, Elusive Range. After a perfectly timed dodge, effective range increases by 3 meters for 5 seconds. Again, this is why I didn't do this line across the bottom here. I already got the range increased by 3. All the way to 4 total. I don't need it for 5 seconds if I've already got it, so again, it's kind of pointless. I mean, you could end up getting higher range, whatever. That might be fun, getting extreme range for 5 seconds. But I just don't think it's worth it. Especially in contrast to this last one, Perpetual Fire. Fire rate increased by 10%. That's a flat rate over top of everything. So that felt like a better option. And finally, perpetual range. Effective range increases by 1 meter. This one being at the very end here didn't seem like it was very viable, and it's only 1 meter. So again, this is why I went with the entire top row here. Seemed like a really good set, and it's been great the entire time I've been using this. It's fantastic, even for flyers, heavy enemies, wiping out huge amounts of small guys. It's been good.
Overall, the primary weapons have good variation, but nothing that truly stands out as the best one. Even the Melta rifle has its place, but it doesn't fill the same role on the field as the other two. For secondary weapons, you only have two choices, the bolt pistol or the Neo-Volkite pistol. Both are viable, and both pair well with the other primary weapons. Let's start with the bolt pistol. This bolt pistol is far better than people give it credit for. It's accurate, carries a shit ton of ammo, fires very fast, and does a good amount of damage. Maybe it's that I click faster than most people, but I prefer this pistol over the Volkite. You can headshot small enemies, whether they're Chaos or Tyrannid, pretty easily with this thing. It's a lot easier than using the space-age cat toy to attempt to give aliens eye surgery from 30 meters away. Anyway, here's the perk breakdown for it. Okay, so for the bolt pistol, I actually went with the one with the most ammo. Felt like it made sense for your backup. You always want to have as much ammo as possible. There are some other choices here if you need accuracy, which in this case I really don't think you do. Or one with one more firepower to push it to 9. I just don't think it was viable. Anyway, that was the one I went with. For the perk tree, first one, Perpetual Precision. Max spread decreased by 10%. Again, this is accurate enough. I don't think you need to even add that much, and that's not even enough to matter, so I did not go with that one. Great Might. Damage increased by 10% against Terminus. If you're using your pistol against Terminus enemies, there might be some other problems you might want to look into. Again, I mean, I went with this one because I was trying to get to the next one, which is Retaliation. After a perfectly timed dodge, deal 25% more damage for 5 seconds. That's many shots. In 5 seconds, probably get off, 15 rounds? By the way, with all these perks said and done, I'm carrying 24 bullets per magazine. I know that says 18, but once you're in the level, it's 24, as you probably saw with the footage before this slide here. So, dealing 25% more damage for 5 seconds, that's enough to really down something with a high damage output, so it's a good one. The other one is Elusive Precision. After a perfectly timed dodge, max spread decreased by 25% for 5 seconds. Again, the spread isn't the issue with this thing, it was the damage and the ammo, so again, I didn't think that was viable. Gunstrike Reload. After a gunstrike, the equipped secondary weapon instantly reloads. Why the distinction? This is the equipped secondary, there's only one, so this weapon? Anyway, this is the fastest reloading weapon in the game. I don't care for that one either. Pushing on to Artificer. Perpetual Precision. Max spread decreases by 10%. Again, broken record, not needed. Divine Might. Damage increased by 10%. Yeah, of course. This is a not very powerful weapon. Bring the damage up as much as you can. That seems like an obvious choice. Headshots deal 10% more damage with Headhunter. I think Headhunter's in here a couple times. Yeah. So you're getting 20%. If you're finding yourself really hitting the heads of these guys a lot, I could see maybe pushing to that after you get extended magazine. But there's other options that are better. Anyway, extended magazine. Increase size of 15% of your magazine, of the maximum. Obviously. Seems like a wise choice. That's again why this is actually, my mag size is 24 in game. Rapid health. When your health is below 30%, killing 10 enemies in rapid succession restores health by 5%. Cooldown is 30 seconds. Again, the stipulations required for this perk are difficult to get to, especially with a weapon like this. And the payoff is minimal. So, it's kind of a stupid perk, especially in comparison. I'd rather get that Elite Hunter after killing a Majoris level or higher enemy with a melee weapon. Headshots deal 50% more damage for 5 seconds. Yeah, I can see that. That actually has a little bit more strength to it. But, again, stuck with that one because I want to get the rest of these. And you only get so many perk points to put in here, so. On to another edition of Headhunter. That's another call out for that. Another 10% more damage for headshots. Again, maybe that might be a viable one, especially if it was damage increase 10% or headshot damage 10%. Not always hitting the head. I'm shooting at all ranges with this pistol. It's actually fairly accurate for a little pea shooter. And again, extended magazine size increased by 15% of the maximum. Seemed important. So, and again, Divine Might, damage increased by 10%. Obviously a good one. Hone Precision. Equipped weapons maximum spread decreases by 25% when firing without aiming. I don't really fire this pistol a lot whatout aiming, mainly because the hip fire with this one's kind of bad. And this is for maximum spread of equipped weapon, so this would affect whatever weapon you also have. So if this is one if you want to get these two, which is impossible. You can't do this whole line because you're not going to get that many perk points. But if you did this whole line on top, and these are the ones you got, maybe it would be a little bit more accurate. This whole top line is all accuracy and headshot damage, all of it. This one down here is base level damage based on dodging and ammo capacity, pretty much. So those are your choices. This is the one I went with just to get enough damage in. That'll do it.
Now, as much as I dislike the Volkite Pistol, I have used it a lot. It has its place in the game. Killing dozens of low-level Chaos Minor enemies is what this thing can do. You just wave the laser over their faces and they explode. I constantly feel like I'm irritating majors and shining a cat toy in their faces in the hopes that it blinds them enough that they miss me when they shoot at me with actual weapons. In contrast to other weapons in the game that have the capacity to one-shot enemies if you hit them in the head, this seems comically underpowered, even at relic level. The one saving grace is when multiple people are using this weapon, mapping from target to target, dropping enemies as a team. It seems good. But I implore you to try the same thing with any other pistol in the game. It will be faster. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the perks for this, given that the next patch will likely fix this. The Neo-Volkite Pistol. Now for this one I chose the one that does a little bit more damage, or instead of having the one that has more ammo. Honestly, it looks like a lot, 30 and 150 for ammo reserve. This thing pours through ammo very quickly, so that's actually not a whole lot. So I figured just a touch more. It's a 6+ instead of a 6. Kind of needed, because this thing's weak as hell. So for the perk tree, Divine Might, damage increased by 10%. I mean, hey, I'll take whatever damage increase I can get normally, but like I said, this thing pours through ammo like you wouldn't believe. So if you notice, like I kind of centered on ammo down here. I think ammo and some damage. So just like the next one, extended magazine size increased by 15% of the maximum. Yeah, this thing just does not have all it. If you look at how fast the rate of fire is, it's a 10. And the firepower is a 6. You really need to be aiming right at the head and hold it there the entire time while the thing's moving around, so it's a little difficult. It's a fairly weak weapon, and it actually doesn't have a lot of ammo. Next in Mastercrafted, Gunstrike Reload. After a gunstrike, the equipped secondary weapon instantly reloads. Yeah, well, again, this reloads extremely fast, not really pertinent. Combustive Momentum. After a gunstrike, heating speed increases by 30% for 2 seconds. That's it getting up to its full heat speed. See, the longer you keep this weapon trained on a target, the more heat it creates, increasing the damage on said target. So the speed at which it attains its highest rate of damage is increased by 30%. Pretty good, since this thing's weak as hell. You kind of want to get any damage increase you can. So that was honestly More ammo, more damage seemed like a good start from standard and master crafted. Next, Great Might. Damage increased by 10% against Terminus. Again, we've already covered this a couple times, but if your secondary is what you're using on Terminus level enemies, especially this one, oh man. Yeah, I don't advise. This doesn't seem like it has very much of a point, and it's only 10%, so 10% of low power. Anyway, increased capacity, maximum ammo reserve of this weapon increases by 20%. Sounds good to me. You definitely need more ammo. You're doing such a little amount of damage, you might as well do a lot, you know? So next into Artificer. Volkite discharge area. Volkite discharge area expands by 20%. Not really sure what they really mean, the discharge area. I think it's just the impact zone. Obviously this probably causes a little bit more damage. These are the same on both here. Yeah, discharge area by 20%, discharge area expands by 20%. So, either way, you're getting that. Heated enemies cool down 25% slower. That's heat retention. That means the damage that you cause, and as much as it rises, doesn't dissipate as fast as normal. That's fine. Usually I'm holding the thing down until they're dead. It's not often that they just get away. I'm going to retain that target as much as I can. So, it kind of seems pointless. Accelerated combustion, heating speed increases by another 20%. So that's a baseline. It doesn't have any prerequisite for that for accelerated combustion. This one does, but that's actually pretty good. Heating speed increased by 20%. Into relic perks, violent deflagration. After killing a Majoris level or higher enemy with a melee weapon, heating speed increases by 30% for 2 seconds. That's actually pretty good. And 2 seconds, like I said, this thing fires fast as hell. You're getting a lot of shots off at that time. So it basically insta-heats them as you're shooting them, if you can hold that target. Volkite discharge. After killing Majoris level or higher enemy with a melee weapon, damage Volkite discharge increases 30% for 10 seconds. It's a straight damage of the discharge. Okay. Yeah. I actually would like to get that one over this one, but it is what it is. You have to kind of follow this line. Volkite Blitz. Volkite discharge damage increased by 25% and discharge area increased by 25%. That's actually pretty damn good. I kind of wish I could get that one. Unless, is it the same down here? Distributed deflagration. Along with Volkite explosion, 25% of the heat is also transferred to surrounding enemies. Yeah, if you notice at the end when you're shooting these guys with this weapon, they tend to pop when they finally have enough heat. That is one of the benefits. As you start hitting a crowd, they're all burning each other up big time, and the explosions of the dead ones start to really hit the other ones, so that's actually a pretty good one. Yeah, it kind of makes sense for a relic level perk, but that's it.
Melee weapons. The 2 weapons available for the Vanguard are the 2 base level, easy to understand melee weapons in the game, the knife and the chainsword. Both of these are efficient, versatile, and fun to use. It really just comes down to which one you prefer. Please do not believe the bullshit I have heard about either of these weapons. Both are designed in a way to clear hordes or down solo targets. If you don't think so, you don't know how to use the weapon. I've seen a dozen or so videos saying that when you are surrounded by minor level enemies while you have the knife, you are going to die. In my experience, being surrounded by 50 plus enemies that are a mix of minors and majors, while I have only the knife and no ammo, has been a blast, specifically with this class. I'm like, cool, these guys brought me more health and armor buffs in the form of kills. Now I'm getting ahead of myself, but so let's go through these one at a time. Starting with the knife. Like I said before, this thing kicks ass. It has been a great weapon even before the 5.0 patch. Now it's just a slaughterhouse. I guess it needed to be a little easier. First and foremost, regardless of class, this weapon allows you to be very mobile while attacking. What you are basically doing is using your keyboard or controller to move in the direction of the enemy, hit your attack button, and you will cover about 1 to 2 meters of distance with a quick striking attack. Doing this in rapid succession, moving from target to target, will clear a room of miners very quickly. Just throw a parry in whenever you see them about to attack, and you will instantly kill the attacker and gain your armor back. You don't need to see the blue circle in order for a good parry to work. Wait for the nice and slow animation of the enemy attack and hit the parry button. If you hold the attack button down and then release for your first attack, you get a little bit more power out of the attack.
If you power up an attack after a couple quick strikes, you turn into a flying blender that kills everything that is attacking you while you cause massive damage to anything in front of you. Be careful when you choose to do this maneuver. You cannot stop it once it gets going. If you need to parry or dodge during that attack, you are going to get hit. I usually choose to use it once I am down to a major that needs to die so I can get some health back. Overall, the strengths of this weapon over the chainsword is the speed of strikes, mobility, and a little bit quicker executions. I like this because I don't need to see some cinematic finisher that takes 10 seconds while 4 majors circle around behind me. I just want to stab, and move on. Now for the perks. Alright, so for the knife, I went with the balance. Honestly, this still is the one for me. Fencing's broken in 5.0, or at least that's what they're saying. I actually don't use a lot of fencing weapons. I stick with balance. Balance seems to make sense to me. The parry windows are totally effective as long as you get used to them. I really don't miss a lot of those, so it's kind of weird that everyone says fencing has to be this great thing, and then they go and nerf it. So whatever. The whole block ideology doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. There's a lot of power there, but you're missing out on the invulnerability of the animation that you're getting when you actually get a parry. So that doesn't ring true to me. So that's why I stick with a balanced weapon. So for the perks, first one, Armored Strength. When you have full armor, melee damage increases by 10%. It kind of is irritating. You're constantly mitigating armor, so it's just I don't see it being as constant as the one below it. Perpetual Strength, which is melee damage increased by 5% across the board, regardless of the state of your armor. So that just seemed like a more logical one for me. First in Mastercrafted, Sharp Impact. Right and left skull crusher. Area of effect radius increases by 50%. It's a certain attack that you have. I just don't use this as often as I probably should, so I didn't get the perk for this. Kinetic Energy. Each consecutive heavy attack increases heavy attack melee damage by 3%, up to 30% for 3 seconds. So there are times when I will just chain heavies over and over, especially when I'm just trying to get a stupid Majoris enemy, usually one that's shooting at me, and I close distance with him with the grapple launcher and start beating the hell out of him. And that usually will help get him down quickly. So that's a good one, especially at Mastercrafted. Now these two are the same. It's just 2 different iterations of Perpetual Strength on the way to Artificer. So yeah, melee damage increased by 5%. Got them both though, so that's a 10% right there. First one in Artificer, Shadow Stab. Replace Heavy Swing with Shadow Stab. Hold the attack button to charge it. Damage increases by 100% per 1 second of charging. The Chainsword has the same thing. I actually prefer that on the Chainsword as well. This just seemed like a good idea. It does take a little bit to do, and you gotta get a little lucky with this, but it's usually worth it. Shoulder Bash. Replace Distant Stab with Shoulder Bash while evading and sprinting. Tap the attack button to quickly perform an area of effect forward attack. I honestly haven't done this one at all. It just didn't seem like the kind of thing I needed. So if this is something that you like, let me know in the comments. Be happy to know a little bit more about it. I got both of these, the Chaos Slayer and Tyrannid Slayer. It's just an additional 10% damage to each race. I might change that out if I feel like there's another perk that's better than getting 10%, basically across the board, 10% more damage. First in Relic. Tide of Battle. Power wave forward distance increases from 4 to 8 meters for Whirlwind Slash. I think that one's actually it's fairly important just because of the Whirlwind Slash. That's your swing spiral attack there. Trying to catch up to enemies when they're running away from you is kind of imperative, so I'm kind of glad that I ended with that one. Reeling Blow. Enemies hit by Whirlwind Slash deal 30% less damage for 4 seconds. Cooldown is 10 seconds. Don't really care. So they deal 30% less damage for 4 seconds. What if they don't even attack me for 4 seconds? Oftentimes they end up being knocked down or run away, so didn't really seem as effective. Terminus Slayer. Melee damage against Terminus level enemies increased by 20%. Again, your melee weapon being used against Terminus level enemies increased by 20%. Maybe your... I assume that this also counts towards executions and other major attacks that you might be able to get on them with a melee attack. And yeah, I occasionally use my melee attack on Terminus level enemies, of course, but it just kind of, as infrequently as I see them, it just doesn't seem like it's worth the mastery point. Extremist Slayer, same as above. Melee damage against extremist level enemies increased by 15%. Also, only 15%. Again, not really worth the mastery point, especially at a relic level. Hard target. While performing a light combo, you take 15% less ranged damage. I can see getting that, as much as you're getting shot at, especially at lethal level. I swear they mix in ranged with melee intentionally in areas so that you're bogged down getting shot at, so that can help. And last but not least, kill streak. After killing 10 enemies in a rapid succession with a light combo, you do not lose control upon taking heavy hits, and you cannot be knocked down for 5 seconds. Cooldown is 10 seconds. Interesting perk. Again, it's a little weird that this is all the way up at the relic level. Didn't seem like anything I would ever shoot for, so it's alright. The Chainsword. This is one of the most iconic, recognizable weapons in the franchise. The moment you see it, you know you're looking at a Warhammer 40k product. Because of that, I had expectations. While I feel this weapon falls short of what it could be, it does the job. If you use the knife for a few rounds and then go back to this thing, it feels like you are attacking in slow motion with a pool noodle full of concrete. It seems unnecessarily slow, and specifically at base level, it is drastically underpowered. Once you get this thing up to relic level, it does a good job. While you are leveling it up, it feels like harsh language may be more effective than this thing on anything stronger than the weakest enemies in the game. Once you start to figure out the patterns of attack, what to do when, and get some perks on it, it gets fun. You have to get some timing down and learn when those sweeping hits are going to happen. There are light attacks and heavy attacks. Depending on how many light attacks you have done in your string of attacks, the heavy attacks change. If your heavy strike is the first attack you do, it will be a simple weapon strike, like with your pistol. If it is the second, it's a front kick that can interrupt or stagger majors. If it's the third, it's a pretty strong shoulder slam that also interrupts and staggers. If you make your fourth strike a heavy hit, you do a stomp that kind of stuns or staggers and sometimes knocks down everything around you. This is great for clearing off a ton of miners and giving you a chance to prioritize targets or reposition so you're not surrounded anymore. Now there are some perks that change what your first strike, heavy attack, is into a strong, chargeable strike that does a ton of damage. This is nice, but I hardly ever use it because it takes too long to charge. Combat is generally too dynamic to stop what you are doing and charge an attack for more than a second. I might do it once or twice a round, if that. Another thing to note is your sprinting attack with this weapon. It's a good diving swipe with a chainsaw that kind of staggers and interrupts enemies. I do this a lot as an opener. Please remember that you cannot run backwards or sideways in this game. So, in order to get this to work properly, face the enemy, hold the run button just enough to see that shoulder dip to start the run animation, and then hit the attack button. This lets you shorten the whole process so you don't need some giant running start. With all this in mind, let's look through the perks for the Chainsword. For the Chainsword again, I went for a balanced weapon for the same reasons I said earlier. Balance just seems to work for me. I have no problem with the parry windows. Fencing, of course, everyone says is broken and doesn't do as much damage. Speed's better, but that's about it. And the block mechanic that they came up with for 5.0 doesn't seem to be a valid method, even with what they've got. Again, you're skipping out on the animations that give you a chance to look around in a state of invulnerability. I would much rather have that than just even a little bit more damage. So that's kind of where I come out on that. For the perk tree, Armored Strength. When you have full armor, melee damage increases by 10%. For me, this isn't a good first perk to have, especially when you're just starting out. You're not going to have full armor a lot, so just saying. I would rather go with Perpetual Strength, where melee damage increases by 5% regardless of the state of your armor. So I think that's a good one to start with. Pushing into Mastercrafted, Crushing Heal. Enemies hit by Stomp deal 30% less damage for 4 seconds. Cooldown is 10 seconds. I actually like that one. I wouldn't mind having that. I don't use my Stomp enough. I try to force myself. Every time I remember, I try to do it. It's basically your 4th attack if your 4th is a heavy attack. So it's a good one. Swift Recovery. Heavy attacks restore 100% more contested health. Applies to the following attacks: Quick Punch, Front Kick, Shoulder Bash, and Stomp. That's really good, especially at Mastercrafted. Come on, I can't see not getting that. So that's a great one. Now I think these are both Perpetual Strength, so melee damage increased by 5%. So either way you go, either route you choose, you're going to get that. You can get both if you decide to not get one here at the end, which might not be a bad idea. But it's only 5%, so a total of 10. Pushing into Artificer. Reverberating Impact. Stomp area of effect radius increases by 50%. Not gonna lie, that'd be pretty cool. Your stomp becomes very critical. Getting everyone down, especially if you're fighting close in with allies, really helps a lot. Saw Blade. Light combo length increases from 4 to 5 strikes. Gotta say, I didn't think that was a big deal until recently. It really helps. When you're slaughtering huge waves of miners, man, it helps, because you're just sweeping them off the ground like dirt. Chaos Slayer and Tyrannid Slayer, just a additional 10% for whichever one you choose. I actually went with Tyrannid just because, honestly, I like using the chainsword whenever I'm facing Tyrannids. It's just kind of a fun thing. Although there's times where I really like the knife in the same circumstance. It's just whatever I feel like. Menorah Slayer. Melee damage against Menorah's level enemies increases by 20%. This kind of feels stupid. They're weak already. It's kind of overkill. Overkill's underrated, though, so I totally understand if that's what you want to do. Hard Target. While performing a light combo, you take 15% less range damage. That one actually seems more tactically sound than Menorah Slayer. So I totally understand if that's the one you want to do. That tactically seems more intelligent. Yeah, in fact, this whole top tier up here actually does feel a little bit better. I might give that a shot. All of these on top, given what I've been through in the last few days since patch 5, kind of feel better. Anyway, first one in Relic. Trampling Stride. After performing a stomp, hold the attack button to perform an additional stomp. I've seen a lot of other players utilizing this to great effect. I actually used to have it in the build I had prior, and it is kind of obnoxious. It ends up becoming a little bit too much. It's the same exact thing that the heavy class has, the double stomp. Sometimes it becomes just superfluous. It's unneeded. So, Full Throttle. Switches punch with full throttle. Hold the attack button to prepare the attack. Damage increases by 100% per 1 second while prepping. This one is kind of, if you get good at utilizing it, it can be very effective, but it can also get you killed. So you got to be careful. It takes a while to charge, and getting that full second while you're in close combat, it's not exactly a long strike. I mean, you do lunge forward, and it's a sweeping attack, and it hits everything in front of you. So it can be very good. Use at your own discretion. Majora Slayer. Melee damage against Majora's level enemies increases by 10%. I had to get that. I wasn't going to get these last two here. I mean, that's the majority of what gives me trouble, is the Majora's. It's the one that's the most frequent, but is also more health than miners. So, Extremist Slayer. I seem to be using my chainsword a lot against extremists here and there. Seem to be one of the right choices for this. Oh, at least their last little bit of health, you know? Melee damage against extremist level enemies increased by 15%. It's not 15%, but it's enough. Momentum Gain. Each consecutive light attack increases light attack melee damage by 3% up to 30% for 3 seconds. This again is one of the ones that was on the knife. Just, I think it was called something else. That's a good one if you can get all the way up there. But again, if you look at how many perks you'd have to go in a straight line right to it in order to get that one, and I wasn't willing to do that. But I actually may change that up. It depends. Kill Streak. After killing 10 enemies in rapid succession with a light combo, you do not lose control upon taking heavy hits, and you cannot be knocked back for 5 seconds. Cooldown is 10 seconds. Again, this is one that I felt like should have been back here, like Mastercrafted or something like that. And it's not really one I would spend all my perk points to get. It kind of encourages you to branch off, which is okay. So that's that. Now that we've gone through all the weapons with this guy, let's hit the character perks tree. The main thing I have stressed at the start of this video has been survivability of this character. This is due to the very last perk you unlock in the tree of 16 perks, Adrenaline Rush. This means you'll have to play through 16 levels of not having this. I actually like that it is the final perk because you need to learn to fight without it to earn the right to have this amazing perk. Also, I think I need to make a note here that until patch 4.0, this perk was worthless as it was only a 1% health gain on Majoris melee kills. Once patch 4 hit, it was increased to 10% of your health per melee kill of Majoris level enemies or higher. I've been near death at the start of a fight and ended with full health and full armor. No other class has anything like this. There are a few kill 10 enemies in rapid succession and get 5% type perks, but it's more rare to accomplish this in contrast to just a melee kill of major or higher enemies. Also, a quick note, if you are stealing executions from a Vanguard, don't be surprised if you get yelled at or cussed out. You are stealing health and armor from them. Stop it. Okay, now let's go through the whole tree one at a time. Okay, so first one in core, moving target. Each melee attack you land reduces the ranged damage you take by 1%. Up to 15%. If you do not land a melee attack for 3 seconds, the effect ends. Yeah, I mean, it's a good one to start, especially when it's your first perk. Makes sense. I wouldn't stick with it at the end, though. Next, Duelist. Perfect parry and perfect block window increases by 50%. Yeah, this is another reason I really like using balanced weapons, because I have that. So, yeah, I can't see not having that, especially in comparison to these other ones. Retribution. After you are grabbed or knocked back, you deal 20% more melee damage for 10 seconds. This one, even though I use it, it's kind of... I just didn't like the other two. You know, I don't think it's that great, but it's the one I use. Melee Mastery. Melee damage increases by 10% against Majoris level and higher enemies. Considering that's the majority of the difficult things you're going to face from fight to fight, I just felt like that was a necessity. So that's the one I'm choosing there. Close Combat Focus. You take 20% less melee damage, but 10% more ranged damage. It just didn't seem like a good balance. Honestly, the things that hurt me the most have been range damage. The last thing I need is to just get shot down really easily, so I've been choosing that one. Consecutive Execution. Killing 10 enemies in rapid succession restores equipment charges by 1. Cooldown is 180 seconds. It just didn't seem like that was something I needed. I probably would like it if I used it enough. Upper Hand. After a perfectly timed parry, block, or dodge, you do not lose control upon taking heavy hits, and you cannot be knocked back for 5 seconds. This is one of those ones I've never been attracted to these perks. I'm actually usually not getting hit with heavy hits right after a perfectly timed parry, block, or dodge. And it's only for 5 seconds, so only for, you have a 5-second window after a perfectly timed parry, block, or dodge where this even makes sense. It just seems so superfluous and stupid, I just have no interest in taking that kind of perk. Conviction. The moment your armor is fully depleted, you take 15% less health damage for 10 seconds. That actually might be a good one that I might try, honestly, in comparison to the, I can see, for some reason I was getting that confused with this one. That's why I don't use it, because I'm never letting go of the Duelist, ever. So, that's a good one, but I'm not letting that go. Last one in core, Honed Reactions. When your health is less than 50%, your perfect dodge window is doubled. That is the one I used to use. It's just that I'm rarely knocked back, never grabbed. I don't even know what that would entail. Yeah, I could see using that. That is a good one. I might use that one. Although, when you're already using Duelist, it kind of seems a little over the top. Yeah, I guess it's up to you. So, your team perks. Melee Champion. All squad members deal 15% more melee damage. I do like this one. It's just, honestly, I wish they would push it to 20. I would use it if it was 20. I know maybe another 5% doesn't really make a difference, but it just seemed kind of weak. So, Unmatched Zeal. Melee finishers of extremist level enemies additionally restore a small amount of health for any squad member. So that's any squad member who completes a melee finisher of an extremist gets a small amount of health. As infrequent as you see extremist enemies, and as small as that health boost is, it seems a little pointless. Inner Fire. All squad members can restore ability charge by 15% by performing finishers. So that includes finisher gun strikes and executions. So as often as I'm doing that, man, yeah, I will definitely be boosting my ability charge over and over by 15% each time. Yeah, for sure. So gear. Everything in gear has to do with your grapnel launcher. So, Restless Fortitude. After a diving kick, you take 10% less range damage for 10 seconds, which is actually good because you just jumped into the shit. You might as well have a little bit of protection when you get there, you know? Kind of makes sense. Zone of Impact. Performing a finisher with grapnel launcher deals a small amount of damage to nearby enemies. Yeah, also, what do they define as a finisher with the grapnel launcher? It's not like you ever use the grapnel launcher as your weapon to accomplish a finisher. You can get there, and then your guy kind of stops in front of him and then lets you do the finisher, so I just don't take that. Thrill of the Fight. After a perfectly timed parry, block, or dodge, you take 15% less health damage for 3 seconds. 15%, 3 seconds. Yeah, I'm not using that. Shockwave. Diving kick additionally deals damage in a 5-meter radius. Yeah, I want everyone getting out of my way once I get there. Like having that kind of shockwave when you hit, it allows you to figure out what you're going to do and hit those guys. Tenacity. After killing 10 enemies in rapid succession, diving kicks damage increases by 25% for 10 seconds. Cooldown is 30 seconds. If you decide to take this one, you got to keep your eyes up on the top left of your screen to see this icon underneath your health bar appear so that you know that you have the chance of shooting your grapple launcher to do it. It's just, my eyes are not up there all the time, and I would miss it more than I would see it. It's just not one for me. Grim and Determination. When grapnel launcher is in cooldown, weapon damage increases by 10%. My grapnel launcher is often in cooldown, so this actually used to be the one that I took, but I had to go with combat readiness. It just kind of makes sense. Collateral damage. Diving kick additionally deals a small amount of damage to enemies on the way to grapnel launcher's target. That's fine. I've noticed a lot of times, especially in 5.0, that if you hit anything on the way out there, a lot of times it'll stop you mid-flight, which sucks, because you don't cause damage to that. You just land in front of him and he starts kicking your ass. So, tip of the spear, edge of the knife. Enemies hit by diving kick take 15% more range damage for 10 seconds. So I guess if someone's shooting at the target that you just got to, yeah, it makes sense. Well, alright, I get that. And then combat readiness, grapnel launcher recharges 20% faster. That's just a good one. You always want it recharging 20% faster because usually, for me anyway, as soon as I have it, I use it. I hardly ever have both of my charges for this even ready. I'm always using it. Tactical Prowess. This is your first in signature. Performing a finisher with the grapnel launcher restores its charge. We already covered that, so it doesn't actually happen. Taking lethal damage restores all armor instead of incapacitating you. Cooldown is 180 seconds. I really like this one, but also remember you only have 2 segments of armor. So restoring all should just say both. And just getting 2... You're like 1 hit away, especially in lethal, you're like 1 hit away from just being dead anyway. It'll restore it, and then you're dead. Probably faster than I just said it. So, I don't know if it's actually that good. And this is the one that has made the class for me. 1 perk. Adrenaline Rush. I've talked about it a few times. Melee kills of Majoris level or higher, enemies restore health by 10%. Now, 10% might not seem like much, but I've gotten in fights with like 6 or 7 Majoris, so that's 70% of my health coming back to me on executions. And I make sure they're executions. A lot of dodges, a lot of parries, going in with the knife, usually. Sometimes with the chainsword. I feel stupid that a lot of the fights that I haven't recorded, I've been the last brother standing and been able to take down 30 or 40 on my own. And it just keeps you alive the entire time. It's unbelievable. It just makes this class so much stronger. Without that perk, I probably wouldn't play this. The survivability alone is incredible. So that's the one that kind of makes it for me. Now that I've covered what this class is capable of doing, let's focus on what you can do for the team. Again, this is a team game, regardless of how people I end up paired with in pugs for operations mode seem to play. In lethal mode, if you die, I die. You cannot afford to be greedy with ammo, steal executions, or grab medkits you don't need. The The more you help your teammates, the easier this is all going to be. With that in mind, let's cover how this class can help the team. First and foremost, you do have 3 team-based perks to choose from, of course. Really, only Inner Fire seem to be the most beneficial currently in Patch 5, but that is up for you to choose. One major thing I feel is your job on the field is to stop reinforcement call-ins. Once you hear majors making that call, target them with your grapnel launcher and fire. The grapnel launcher stops a call-in with 1 shot. This is much easier than trying to mag dump some major to interrupt the call. Please remember that you can do this. It's a great benefit to your team to not have to face more enemies than needed. The second team dynamic aspect the Vanguard brings to the table is a big one. Once you acquire the Adrenaline Rush character perk, you shouldn't need medkits except in emergency situations. This means the other 2 people in your squad can heal much more often. I've seen a few videos online where people are confused by injured players who refuse medkits and they can't figure out why. This is why. I heal through combat like Miyamoto Musashi and don't need medkits. You do need them, so take them. Lastly, your tactical presence should be a benefit to your team. Since you can use the grapnel launcher to move around from enemy to enemy, use that to aggro certain enemies to you and pull them off your ranged fighters so they can start placing some unimpeded fire on priority targets. This does mean your battle awareness needs to be a little more expanded than just solo targets or just what's in front of you. Look at how the team is being affected by the enemy as a whole, orchestrate their movements instead of the enemy dictating yours, and facilitate the combat effectiveness of your squad. One of my favorite places this tends to be demonstrated is the first major hallway in Decapitation that goes from the place where you are placing charges to the elevator that goes to the Imperial Guard soldiers holding the bridge. Many times, groups of enemies spawn on both sides of the hall, and an extremis of some kind spawns in the hall. Push to the elevator, aggroing what you can, and get the enemy to funnel into the hall. This keeps them in front of you, clustered into a tight space, allowing the team to place fire into a single location. The alternative is that you occupy that space, fighting a battle on 2 fronts, dividing your combat effectiveness in half. Do not fall into this quagmire. I have seen people freeze in place in this hall and wipe. Use the grapnel launcher and get to the point of domination at the elevator. Even without effective communication, people will follow where the enemy is weakest. Try your best to facilitate that. Here are some quick pros and cons for this class. I'll start with the cons. You're not really the biggest damage dealer on single targets. You're more of a damage over time on multiple targets. You're great at clearing up the chaff. This is also why you may like carrying the Volkite at times. Take the Fall of Atreus, for example. The whole area where you have to move the train cars around is always flooded with little shits. You should help the team by laying waste to the littles and only really hitting the majors for health and armor gains. Another thing is that not a whole lot to choose from for ranged weapons. I wish they would just throw in the basic bolt rifle and auto bolt rifle to the class. Oh, and the heavy bolt pistol. I would love that. The weapons you have here are great, but there isn't a lot of variety, really. Third con, I would say, is you only have 2 armor sections. Please grab armor pickups for yourself, as they give you 2 armor sections instead of the standard 1 for this class. You don't have a lot of armor, so again, get those Majoris level executions for health and armor. And if you're not playing as this class, please allow both your sniper and your Vanguard to get those armor pickups. They're much more valuable to them. And last con, special ability doesn't really do much. While the grapnel launcher is nice and versatile, it really isn't that great compared to other class abilities. And given that what the Omni Scrambler on your backpack does according to the actual lore of Warhammer 40k, it is kind of disappointing to see things underutilized. I'll cover that later. Next, the pros. Again, you are highly mobile. The grapnel launcher gets you around the field and allows you unique opportunities to orchestrate the fight. Please overuse this ability. You can't go wrong, however you choose to use it. Second, you're good for clearing up groups of miners. All your ranged weapons and melee weapons have the ability to just decimate small groups. Don't be afraid to dive in on a group and then clear them out. Third, amazing perks that keep you alive. Adrenaline Rush is the main one, but Duelist and Inner Fire help a lot too. Again, you are a strong survivor on the team. Use those perks. Number 4. Your weapons tend to have a fair amount of ammo. One major thing I have liked for this class in comparison to, say, the sniper or the heavy is the amount of ammo you have for your weapons. I am never running out of ammo on this guy. I felt like I was completely empty way too often on my heavy, and the sniper never had enough ammo for his primary. This class tends to have enough to get anything done. Lastly, your versatile use of the grapple launcher. You can stun extremists, enemies, stop call-ins, use it for evasion, and close in on priority targets. While this ability really only benefits you, the more effect you have on the fight, the more it frees up your team to hit priority targets and do what they need to do. Overall, this class is an ultimate survivor with high mobility who doesn't need medkits and is a blast to play. When I first started playing this game on the day it released, this was the class I had no interest in. Now, after maxing out every class and every weapon, this class is easily one of the best in the group, especially for first-time players. If I had some facets I would change or add in this class, a few things come to mind. A few more weapon options would make more sense with the lore and just add some flavor to this class. This is supposed to be a special ops type fighter. Google Vanguard Warhammer 40k. It's more of a title for certain types of units than it is a unit, specifically. These are your veteran soldiers with more access, ability, and specialization. They actually carry 2 knives on some of the Vanguard fighters. The one thing that bothered me is that you actually have as I've stated before, the Omni Scrambler backpack on this character and cannot use it. If you made it so you can hold down your ability button or something and switch over to this, it should be used to just silence all enemy reinforcement call-ins for like a minute or something. Lastly, give us the option to really use the grapnel launcher more. We should pull minor enemies to us instead of us to them. We should also get actual finisher animations that use this thing. It's just sitting on your thigh the whole game unless you use it for the one thing it does. Why not fire it through an enemy's head or extend the cord around the neck of a major and put your knee in his back and wrench him backward till his neck breaks? Just something to incorporate it would be good. Well, I hope you enjoy the class and learn something from what I covered in this. Leave a comment below if you have anything to add or have any contrasting ideas. I'm always open to learn more on these classes. Hope to see you out there, and happy hunting.
Everyone down! Smoking out!